Hello folks and welcome back to my channel. Now in this video I will show you how to get your F-86 Sabre up into the air. When it comes to starting up the F-86, there is really not very much to it. At first you need to keep in mind that the F-86 is not really able to start its engine on its own power. It always needs to be connected to ground power provided by the airfield's ground crew. For that, as a first step, we need to open our radio menu and contact the ground crew and ask them to connect us to the ground electrical power.
Chief, turn on the ground power. Copy. Ground power is now on.
Now some of the gauges came to life, as you can see. As a next step, we can turn on our radio here, and we contact the ATC of our local airfield, which I have put to channel 1 in here. Keep in mind that the F-86 Sabre's UHF radio system can only be pre-programmed. There is no possibility to change the channels in flight. So we're gonna contact the ATC of Groom Lake here and ask them to start our engine.
In field 1, request startup. Field 1, cleared for startup.
Alright, ground power is connected and we have the permission to start our engine. So as a next step we want to turn on our master engine switch here. Right below it there is the battery switch. We want to push that down for a few seconds to the engine starter. And then switch it back up to the battery. Now we keep our engine RPM gauge here in view, and when it hits roughly 3 to 4% we can advance our throttle to the first idle position. This spools up the engine a little bit more, and once it hit around 9 to 10% of RPM, we can put the throttle to full idle. Now there is 3 gauges that we have to keep an eye on. The exhaust temperature here, the fuel flow here, and the engine RPM here. Alright, now you can see all our values are within a safe range here. That means our engine is up and running and in idle. Now as a next step we can close our canopy by pushing this lever here. Keep it for a few seconds to provide a safe seal. Flip our mirror down. Turn on our oxygen supply here. And as a next step, I don't actually know why the Sabre has it or if it was common back then, but after startup we need to switch the hydraulic system from the alternate hydraulic power here to the utility hydraulics, which is achieved by this switch here. We keep that for a few seconds, and if the alternate hydraulic light here is off, we can see that it worked and the aircraft is now running on the normal hydraulic system. Now as a next step we can set our lights as desired. The position lights here, I put them to a steady, and also we have here the taxi and landing lights, extend those. Now normally we would also make a go around our aircraft before startup. As you can see, the air brakes are extended. We want to retract them, of course, by this switch here on the throttle, which of course I have bound to a position on my HOTAS. In they go. And as a next step we also want to extend our flaps to a takeoff position by pulling the wing flap lever down here. I also have that bound to a HOTAS position, and by a look over our shoulder we can confirm that they are all the way down. Now as you can see, we have some drop tanks here. We can also activate those now. These are outbound tanks here for additional fuel. Check again if all our gauges here are within safe values, and that's basically it. So now as a next step we can contact the ATC again and request a taxi to runway.
Field 1, request taxi to runway.
Of course, before we start taxiing, we need to contact the ground crew again and ask them to disconnect the ground power, because you know in real life they would have this small card connected with a cable to our aircraft here, and if we would just start rolling without telling them to disconnect, we would pull that little card with us, which would be very unfortunate for the ground crew.
Chief, turn off the ground power. Copy. Ground power is now off.
Alright, we are now basically ready to taxi. We want to push our wheel brakes down, increase our engine RPM to somewhere around between 60 and 70%. Release the wheel brakes, and we will start rolling at some point. Now in order to steer the aircraft we only need the nose wheel steering button, which is located here on the flight stick. Of course you should have bound it to your HOTAS. And by making very gentle inputs on the rudder pedals and keeping the nose wheel steering button down, you can steer the aircraft. Now before we approach the runway, we will contact ATC one more time to get our takeoff permission.
Field 1, request takeoff.
Alright, there's our clearance. Slowly getting aligned with the runway, using the nose wheel steering system. Coming to a stop again. Also keep in mind that the jet engines of these early jet fighters, they react with a significant delay. You will feel that certainly. Okay, we are ready to take off. We should keep our wheel brakes pressed and increase the engine RPM to 100%. If everything works correctly, the wheel brakes should keep us in place even at full throttle. We release our wheel brakes and start rolling. Now because these early jet fighters, they didn't have an afterburner, the first few meters the acceleration is quite slow, as you can see here. As we approach 100 knots, we start pulling back on our flight stick slightly, and depending on our weight, the aircraft should start taking off on its own somewhere around 120 to 130 knots. As we have a positive climb rate, we can retract our landing gear. I usually also have that bound to a button on my HOTAS, but you can also use the brown lever there. Gear up. And once we are at around 170 to 180 knots, I can also start retracting the flaps. Visually confirm that they are completely retracted. Yes, they are. Now one more thing with this older aircraft that have nothing like an autopilot or anything to keep you in place, you will need your trim hat. It's located usually here on the flight stick. Of course you should also have that bound to your HOTAS. You should use your trim very often and frequently in order to keep your aircraft steady. Alright, now that basically concludes this lesson. Thank you very much for watching and see you next time.